listed it this way because, like, it takes me weeks to fill this thing out, and I go through it very methodically. So this is basically in the order in which I came to the conclusion that I was going to vote for them. Jeter, obviously.
Yep.
Walker, Schilling, Bonds, Clemens, voted for them before. Todd Helton, voted for him before. Scott Rowland, wanted to vote for him. In the previous 2 years, just didn't have quite enough room on my ballot. Then I got down to the last three names. That's when the agonizing really begun. And eventually, I sweated my way through Billy Wagner, Jeff Kent, Omar Vizquel, and I always believe that part of my responsibility as a voter is not just to say, here's who I voted for, but to explain how I did it. That's what I did in the column in The Athletic today.
All right, we'll go through it and try to summarize it. But obviously, as you want to read the full column, but where way to go. But let's go with Rowland first. 9th highest WAR all-time among third basemen. He's behind 7 Hall of Famers and Adrian Beltre. So Rowland, remarkable career, obviously defensively we know about, but third baseman also generally underrepresented in the Hall. Well,
there's no doubt about it. And, you know, I was in Philadelphia when Scott Rowland arrived, and I always say this, like, whatever you think of watching Nolan Arenado play third base now, that's what it felt like to watch Scott Rowland play third base, especially when he first arrived in the big leagues. I'd never seen any third baseman do it that way. And, you know, as you start to assess now what he did over the course of his career, I just think people missed how great a player this was. Defensively, special, spectacular. 8 Gold Gloves, right? Second only to Mike Schmidt. But let's compare Scott Rowland to Adrian Beltre, because that's a guy that people just think is a surefire Hall of Famer. You'll be surprised when you look at the numbers how those two compare. Scott Rowland won more Gold Gloves than Adrian Beltre. He had a higher OPS. He had a higher adjusted OPS plus than Adrian Beltre. Wouldn't you be surprised by that if somebody like me dropped that on you? And then the other part is, much better offensive player than people remember. 8 straight years with an OPS of 846 or better. How many other third basemen in history did that? How about none? Wow. Not a one. So Scott Rowland, Hall of Famer for me.
And it's so interesting, the very first thing you said, because I feel like the case for Scott Rowland can be very analytic. And you're saying, I watched this guy, and I'm thinking to myself at the time, this is a Hall of Famer. So you got that eye test element, too, for a guy whose case, I think for a lot of voters, whether they voted for him or not, is very analytic.
Carlos? Yeah, I think that's true.
Well, we were talking in the meeting about the qualitative, research versus the quantitative research, and I commend you because you are pretty much, you understand how to utilize both sides of the spectrum, Typically, you have guys that are very dogmatic about their quantitative stuff, and the other side as well, the qualitative side. But you are in the middle, looking at your ballot, and you see how Omar Vizquel, for example, is one of those ones that I thought I was very curious about, is because I think of him as a Hall of Famer, played against him, been watching him for years, and the guy is an absolute legend to me. But of course, that's the eye test. Maybe also when you look at the numbers, they may not be up there, but guys, it's Omar Vizquel, and you gave Omar a vote as well. So I thought that was very interesting, and I was happy to see that.
All right, let's talk about Omar, because Omar was like a week and a half process for me, because I was down to one spot, and I had
it's
multiple.
Like 1 day per letter. You write very slowly.
I do write really slowly. Watch these highlights, man, and I think this will help explain what I think the Omar Vizquel case comes down to, because I'm taking a beating on Twitter today over this. And it's almost like people are using numbers I respect, by the way, to try to convince me that my eyes didn't see what I thought they saw. And when I watched Omar Vizquel, I thought I was watching something special.
Yeah.
And it's hard to describe, but it means something to me that Omar Vizquel played baseball for nearly a quarter a century, and that teams wanted him to do that, right? It means something to me that his peers, coaches, managers voted him 11 Gold Gloves. That's what they thought of him. And
so what led to the adjective then? Because the defensive excellence is there. Was it offensively not enough punch?
Here's the problem. I made the case Omar Vizquel was the most sure-handed shortstop who ever lived. or at least that I ever saw. And I do this with a stat that I love. Seasons of 140 games and 5 errors or fewer by shortstop since 1900. There were 3 by Omar Vizquel and 3 by every other shortstop who played baseball since 1900. And yet, modern metrics would say errors don't tell us anything. Fielding percentage doesn't tell us anything. We got way better tools than that. I know that. I understand that Omar Vizquel was not Ozzie Smith. I know what he was, and I think I know what he wasn't. But to me, what he was a Hall of Fame player because there was greatness there. There was genius baseball IQ. There was a creativity and a staying power. Won a Gold Glove at 39 years old. So I've been defending it all day.
Yeah.
I've been defending it for another week.
I haven't noticed.
I have no problem with that vote.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that vote.
Vizquel definitely was
I support
great.
you.
One more I want to squeeze in. Billy Wagner, higher career WAR than Raleigh Fingers and Bruce Seaver, and some great numbers, strike per nine.
Yeah.
But here's the guy I don't agree with you on, Jeff Kent. 7-year peak WAR, 35.7. That's lower than Willie Randolph, Lou Whitaker, Ian Kinsler, and Dustin Pedroia. Mad Dog Russo wants him, and I would not vote for Jeff Kent. You.
All right, well, as I wrote, when I got to those last spots, I was trying to find historic greatness, unique historic greatness. And in the case of Jeff Kent, he hit the most home runs of any second baseman in history. He had the most extra base hits of any second baseman in history. He had the highest slugging percentage of any second baseman since Rogers Hornsby, right? So let's take that and realize that whatever we know that Jeff Kent, again, was and wasn't, what he was historically unique and special. That's what I was voting for.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I probably wouldn't vote for Jeff Kent. I probably wouldn't vote for Omar Vizquel, especially in Vizquel's case. Just not enough offense for me. But I do think the most interesting name there is Billy Wagner. I'm surprised he has not gotten as much support as he has. I mean, you pointed out some of the numbers, Adnan. I mean, they're insane. Second best ERA and adjusted ERA ever for relievers, the best K-9 strikeout rate in history among anyone. You stack him up against Mariano Rivera.
The whip.
You stack him up against Trevor Hoffman. I mean, in my mind, if you're a voter and you voted for Trevor Hoffman, you almost have to vote for Billy Wagner.
Yeah, that ERA lowest by left-handed pitch in the live ball era.
That's all.
That's
in the entire live ball era. That's 100
And I get it.
years. No pitcher had fewer base runners than innings pitched, except Billy Wagner. So
I get that his body of work might not have been as big as some other people, but Hall of Fame is about peak as well. It's not as if this guy was a 3-year flash in the pan. He had a career.
Right.
But it's about that peak as well, and his peak was up there, man.
I was going to say, the devil's advocates say not enough innings and durability and such, although people have said that about Larry Walker. And again, I think the numbers bear out the fact Larry Walker, and I hope he gets in on Tuesday, but we'll see.